Are you pivoting into data analytics from some sort of other field? If so, today's episode is for you. We talked to Andrew Madson about his career journey from business, where he was already established. He was already actually pretty high up in his industry, but he wanted to pivot into data analytics. How did he do so? Well, it involved a couple different things. At one point, he was even working 2 jobs at once. He was working an 8-hour day in the mornings and then an 8-hour day in the evenings, one as a business professional and one as a data analyst. He got a master's degree. And also, he talks about how you can use your network and projects to land your first data job. It's a really good episode, so let's go ahead and hop into it.
Welcome to the Data Career Podcast, the podcast that helps aspiring data professionals land their next data job. Here's your host, Avery Smith.
Okay, you guys, my guest today is Andrew Madson, who is a man of many hats. He is a content creator on LinkedIn, giving lots of helpful hints and tips and tricks in his career that you can apply in your data analyst journey as well. He has quite a large experience section with lots of things going on. He works for Western Governors University as a faculty there. He's worked in the past there as a lead data analyst as well. He's a professor at a bunch of different colleges, and he also works for LPL Financial as a product manager in the compliance and analytics and monitoring space. So Andrew, welcome to the podcast. We're so happy to have you.
Thanks, Avery. I'm happy to be here.
Okay, awesome. So you have all these different experiences that you've done in the data world. You didn't study data analytics though, right? You kind of eased into data as your career progressed.
That's right. My undergrad definitely was not in data. I eventually did get a master's in data analytics, but I was already transitioning into the industry before I finished that master's degree.
Okay, awesome. So it doesn't have, the typical background. I don't really believe there is a typical background in data analytics, but Andrew, like he said, studied business, but you've had an opportunity to become a lead data analyst and, kind of in these higher up data positions in multiple different companies. And I wanted you to walk us through the idea of when you're hiring a data analyst, what's really important to stand out as a candidate? What can these listeners do to stand out in the data analyst job search?
Yeah, my thoughts on this have evolved over time. So the data analyst position has just grown and grown and grown as our needs for quality data analysts have really permeated every industry. So there's a lot of opportunity there. Before, when I was new at hiring data analysts and I was new into data myself, I really was focused on the technical skills. I was looking at whatever my stack was, like we use Tableau, whatever it is. And I was looking for applicants who matched that data stack. That's how I began looking for applicants. Now, what I look for if I was hiring a data analyst, I focus much more on the person. I look for somebody who's curious. I look for somebody who's resilient. I look for somebody who's going to mesh well with the team because data analytics is a team sport. One person who just isn't a team player can really throw off the whole dynamic and ultimately the work and the business insights that we're trying to drive. So less important to me is your specific technical skill set. If you know Tableau really well and we're using Power BI, that's totally fine with me. But you're demonstrating that ability to learn. And some of the ways that you can do that, like Avery always talks about, are projects. I love to look at projects. I love to see interesting projects. We've all seen the Titanic data set, and I don't mind if you use that, but I want to see something that you're interested and passionate about, and I want to learn about that with you. And then if we're interviewing, I really want you to tell that story because the ability to communicate as a data analyst is so important. I don't want to have to go to the stakeholders and explain what you were doing. I want you to go and represent yourself and present your insights and build those relationships. So if you can have something you're passionate about, you uncovered some insights and you can communicate those in a story and a narrative that's engaging, those are so important. Those will really set you apart.
Okay, that's awesome. A lot to unpack there that I want to dive a little bit deeper into. It's actually really interesting because I'm assuming you haven't listened to the episode I did with Megan McGuire, another data hiring manager. You haven't listened to that one, right?
I haven't, no.
Okay. And I'm guessing you haven't listened to Jesse Morris, which is another data hiring manager that we recorded on Friday of last week that hasn't even been posted. You didn't listen to that one either, right?
Not that I know of, unless I dreamed it.
So the reason I ask is they actually gave very similar answers. I think we as data analyst candidates often over-index on how much, the technical skills matter. And the technical skills do matter, but there's people who are willing to take a chance on you, and you have to show them that you're more than just, some NPC. I don't even know what that means right now. What does that mean? A non role playing. I don't even know what it means, but it's
A
like a robot.
non-player character. Yeah.
Non-player character. Thank you. You have to show some sort of passion, some sort of
Yeah.
personality, some sort of drive, some sort of like differentiator. And that can be even your grit, your communication, what you like about projects. And it's just interesting that we've had a couple different data hiring managers on the podcast now, and they've all led off with a very similar message. So I think that's really interesting. Now, you mentioned you like to see different types of projects. Could you maybe like walk through, you mentioned, the Titanic data set, which maybe is a little bit overdone in terms of data projects. People could still do it, but maybe have a unique twist on it. Could you also maybe mention some projects that you'd like to see?
I mean, the world is your oyster when it comes to projects that I'd like to see. I really like Annie Nelson's projects that she shares about Tableau on LinkedIn. Her projects are just so succinct. They're about lots of different topics, and she uses one of my favorite tools, Figma. So I'm a little biased there, but she uses it so beautifully. What I like about it is the way she lays out the project, and every topic is so engaging. It doesn't really matter what the topic is, it matters about your passion. So if I was starting over today and I decided I really want to be a data analyst and I'm going to build a project that I want to both showcase who I am, but also my skills and abilities to try to set myself up for success, I would focus on, I would, if I was doing it today, now bear with me. I've got some more machine learning skills, so you can use this as inspiration. I would pull sentiment analysis for Twitter, and I would pull sentiment analysis for Threads, and I would run that against a timeline. Right now, Threads hasn't been around that long, but all the news I'm seeing is like, oh, Threads is a positive place and Twitter's a negative place. Maybe it's the news sites I look at, so there's bias there. But I'd be able to answer that question that I'm actually sincerely interested in, build a dashboard around it. I think a lot of people are interested in that analysis. I'd build the visuals, I'd annotate it, and if I did uncover a significant difference, then I would make that insight super clear and engaging. So it's not just the topic and the tools, it's really what did you pull from it and how are you communicating that? So if I was to do that today, that might be how I would attack it.
Yeah, that's a good point. The presentation is almost more important than the actual content sometimes in the project. And it's so funny because I'm not the best at this in my life, but like if you don't package something, like for instance, if it's a Christmas gift, right? I'm getting Andrew a Christmas gift. And let's say I bought him a nice Rolex. All right. I bought him a really nice Rolex, but I kind of just like put it in, I don't know, in like cellophane wrap and then like threw it in like a grocery bag. And I was like, Merry Christmas, Andrew. Here you go. He's not going to be very impressed. Maybe he will be finally when he opens it up, but it looks more like trash than any sort of gift or present. Right. And so we really need to package our projects very effectively and present them in a way that is very attractive. That means using cool visualizations. That means using, something like Canva or Figma to try to create some sort of like designs. That means using bold, not just like writing a 700 sentence, one paragraph story in your presentation. I think the presentation really matters. Now, I want to dive into the idea. I said, Andrew, what type of project would impress you? And he was like, well, one thing I'm really curious about right now is, and then he talks about, is Threads more positive than Twitter or X or whatever Elon wants to call it today, right? And one thing I really liked, I was like, Andrew, what's a cool project? And he said, one thing I'm curious about. If you can really just answer that question, be like, one thing I'm curious about is, that usually leads to a good project. Do you agree?
100%. And I think one pitfall of data analysts is we get so passionate about the technology and the work we put in. Let's continue on with this example of sentiment analysis between the two platforms. Or like, that's going to take me a little while. I'm going to run NLTK. I'm going to do all this Python code on the back, and nobody cares. They don't care, right? What went into it. And that's the key to successful and effective communication is you're the narrator. You're telling the story. People who are looking at your visualization, they're the audience. It's for them. So you need to really put aside the tendency and the temptation to show how smart you are and focus on what's the audience going to get out of this. I've seen so many amazing visuals that are really hard to make, but I don't get anything out of it. And I wouldn't, if I was making a hiring decision, that wouldn't push me over the edge to hire you because it's not a clearly conveyed insight. I need somebody who can come in, and I'm not hiring right now, so don't take it for that. But when I'm hiring, I need somebody who can come in and clearly distill insights and use their critical thinking, but then be able to create a clear and engaging story around that and make it super simple, but also engaging. And that's a difficult skill.
Yeah, which is not really taught all that much. Inside my bootcamp, the Data Analytics Accelerator, we do 9 different projects. The first 8 are guided. So I'll kind of like give you kind of the steps that you need to take. Of course, there's some wiggle room to kind of go off on your own and change things a little bit. But when one of my students posts this project, even though I explicitly say it, it's one of the biggest mistakes is not bluffing, is what I like to call it, which is the bottom line up front. And it's like, nobody cares a lick about the project that you did unless you give them a reason to care. And so like you said, if you start, for instance, going back to your looking at threads versus Twitter, which one is more positive, which one's more negative. If you don't like present that in a way where it's interesting, or if you don't tell us, oh, look, I actually found that threads on average is 43% more positive than Twitter. Here's how I actually did it, right? If you just start with, here's what I did. I downloaded this package. I did this, and then I wrote some Python code, and then I ran it for 44 days. Like, no one really cares about the journey. It's more about the destination. Now, and I say that with one caveat. People do care about the journey, but not until you show them what the destination is and how luxurious the destination is, right?
That's right. Yeah. And it depends who you're presenting to. If you're presenting to a hiring manager or a recruiter, or you're not there, you're not explaining it, and they're just looking at your portfolio online, what are they going to get out of it? You need to think through their eyes, through their lens, even having family members take a quick look at your presentation and see if it confuses them, if it engages them. Does it follow that visual hierarchy of bottom line up front, like you said, Avery? And does the vertical logic support that bottom line up front that you're saying? Because there's so many applicants for jobs these days. And I remember a posting when I was hiring in a previous role. Within like 2 days, there were like 300 applicants. And I personally wasn't going through the 300 applications. It gets filtered through whatever systems the recruiter uses, and then the recruiters pull X number of candidates and they phone screen them. And I'm only seeing maybe 3 to 4 people by the time it finally gets to me. So that filtering process really relies on your ability to be clear and engaging. Once it gets to me, then there's more nuance, right? Like, we can talk about it. I can understand more what your methodology was. I can give you more than 30 seconds or 10 seconds or however long it's taking the recruiter to decide, should I pursue this or should I not, out of whatever stack of applications that they have. So being able to be super clear and engaging in just a split second is critical, both to your success, your first mission of getting hired, and then your second mission of continued success.
Yeah, that's a good principle to learn in life in general. Usually the way we talk about it in the Data Analytics Accelerator, in your career journey, you basically have to follow the 10-1-10 rule, which means if someone's looking at your LinkedIn, your resume, or some sort of project or portfolio you've done, you have 10 seconds to make a meaningful impression. If you're successful in those 10 seconds, you will earn 1 minute more of that person's time to like continue scrolling, to continue reading, to continue looking at. If you succeed in that 1 minute, you will then earn an extra 10 minutes for that person to actually consider you, think about you, look at your profile. So each one of those steps, you have to be engaging in 10 seconds, you have to be engaging in 1 minute. And then of course you have to have the whole package in the 10 minutes. That's really interesting. That's one of the things that you mentioned is like, before it even gets to me, someone else has to bring these people to me, and we have to be, we have to look good and we have to look engaging to them. Another thing that you mentioned was data analytics is a team sport. I was wondering if you could maybe dive a little bit deeper into what you meant by that.
Yeah, absolutely. Data analysts in general, I'm sure there's some exceptions. You're part of a team. Maybe you have data engineers on your team. Maybe you specialize or focus on a specific domain, but you're all working together, right? You all are individual but together. An example may be, let's say you're part of a central data analytics team. You support multiple business units. Maybe certain members of your team support sales and others support compliance and others support legal and others support marketing, but you're all on the same team. But you're all managing pipelines. You're all helping each other with your different specialties. You all don't know Tableau to the same level, likely. You don't know DBT to the same level. It's really nice to be able to turn around and ask, like, hey, Paul, I'm stuck here. I know you've done stuff like this before. Can you help me? Or, hey, Avery, I have a big presentation to sales later. Can you take a look? If you're working in a silo, you don't get that benefit of being able to get that synergy where the whole is greater than its parts, right? And that's where magic really happens, when teams can come together, share their knowledge and share their skills, and even while working on individual projects, move data analytics forward and move business objectives and wins forward. It's amazing. If you have somebody who's working in isolation, and it could be the most skilled person on the team, but doesn't contribute to that team synergy, they're really taking away from it. It really hurts the team. So I think being a team player and being able to work together is super important. It
Yeah.
goes in line with being flexible. You, as a data analyst, right, you might come into the role with knowing Tableau. You might, be an Excel master, but maybe let's use the same example. We're in a data analytics team. We're all supporting different business units. Maybe sales has chosen to use Power BI and marketing has chosen to use Tableau. That's fairly common where a large enterprise can have lots of different tools.
Yep.
When I was at JP Morgan, I supported multiple business units, and some used Power BI, some used Tableau, and some used Click. Some used MicroStrategy. And I'd never used MicroStrategy in my life. And there were folks on my team who had, and I could lean over and ask them how to use it. It's so important to be flexible and be able to learn and be able to help each other.
Yeah, I love that. I think the team aspect's really important. And then I also love what you said. It's like data analytics in general as a career, you're never going to stop learning. You will always be learning something new. Always, always, always. And so the ability to learn is actually way more of an important skill than any sort of tech skill you could have, SQL, Tableau, whatever. Because for heaven's sakes, Tableau could die tomorrow and you'd have to learn something else. Okay, I wanted to ask you actually in terms of your current tech stack, or maybe we'll talk about your career tech stack. What tool have you used the most as a data analyst, a lead data analyst, a hiring manager?
Excel. Excel's always there, right? I wouldn't say it's what I've used the most robustly, but it's at every single company I've been at. Excel's there in some kind of way. It's always there. I think that's a non-negotiable. I think coming to the table with understanding and being able to hammer out Excel and being able to really quickly prototype things with your business stakeholders in Excel. Excel's the language that business speaks. It just is. You need to be able to do that. I didn't learn Excel first. I learned Python first, right? Like I had basic Excel skills. My Python skills were much better than Excel, but as I've over the years just realized, like, you have to be a master in Excel in order to be successful. It just is what it is. I know it's a controversial take.
No, I like it. I think it's worth saying. I mean, it's survived this long. It's used by business people. Non-analytics people's analytics is Excel, right? That's what people use. I'm curious what you think in terms of like mastering Excel. What are some of the like functions or analyses, basic things that listeners should check off their list of being able to do? How about you name one and then I name one? Because I have my list, but I want to hear yours.
I think all the text functions are
Mm,
super important. Being able to do the regular expressions and clean your data, split your data in between the different columns, just being able to do that on the fly. I've been working in business for a long time, right? And so much of their stuff's in Excel. An executive will email a sheet, or their assistant will email a sheet and be like, hey, make sense of this or clean this up, or like, what do you think about this? You just got to whip through it super fast and be able to draw those insights. I could
okay.
upload it to Tableau or upload it to Power BI or throw it into Python and do it, but they want to see it, right? Like they want to see that underlying work, and then we're on the same page.
Yeah, seeing is believing, right? So they want to be able to see it. Okay, so first pick goes to, text functions and cleaning. I'm gonna take the pivot table. I think doing a pivot table is pretty useful. Business people like a pivot table.
Oh, 100%. Pivot charts, pivot tables, super easy. Makes you look like a genius. They'll ask you in a meeting, hey, what's this? You just do it so fast.
Yeah, I love that.
It's underrated. I don't know if it'll get you hired. I'm going to say that, but I think it is critical for your success.
Okay. What's your second pick? And then I'll do one more.
X lookup for sure.
Okay. Yeah,
I think
that was mine.
I think everybody uses it, constantly.
Yeah. I'm still a little legacy. I still use a VLOOKUP every once in a while, but yeah, just the ability to basically find stuff based off of other stuff in your data set, I think is very powerful. Okay. That was mine. Okay. So Excel, you've used it a lot. Those are some things to learn in Excel. I want to talk a little bit more about your transition into data analytics. I know when we talked about, when we had our little pre-podcast call, you mentioned that you were already working at a place where you were already, earning a decent chunk of money. And so in your transition, you wanted to move into data, but you also didn't want to sacrifice any sort of pay. So that's a little bit of a unique journey. So can you walk us through what you did to transfer and not lose that pay?
Yeah, it was a tightrope walk for me. So I got married super young and immediately went into the workforce and was lucky enough to be able to move up fairly quickly. I didn't have a college degree, but I was very successful. So then I went and I finally decided, okay, it's time. Because at that point, all my colleagues either had JDs or master's degrees, and I hadn't even gotten my bachelor's yet. So I went and got my bachelor's and really loved the data courses that I was exposed to. So I turned around and got my MBA while still continuing to move up in the company. And I found myself in a director level with this MBA. And part of my job was risk analytics and making decisions about, hey, we think this bad risk is happening, make a judgment call on it. And our tools and our processes were super basic. So I started doing some basic statistical analysis that I had learned in my MBA. And I just felt like there was so much I didn't know. And I felt like I was a risk by assessing this risk in a subpar way.
Yeah.
So while doing that, then I decided, okay, I got to learn data analytics. So I went back and did a master's in data analytics while working. I decided that I really wanted to move into data. But here's the problem. I'm already fairly high up in my career that had really nothing to do with data. So I started using every concept that I learned in my classes. Every chance I got, I would do statistical analysis. I would build dashboards. A lot of them were for myself because I had to make these, I wasn't presenting it to anyone. I was presenting it to me to make the judgment call. But I used it at every chance I could get. And then I fell into the same trap that most folks applying to entry-level data analyst jobs are faced with, is that it wants 3+ years of experience. So I decided, if I'm going to be able to transition to a data job that's going to be able to pay for my family, I already had multiple kids at this point, high up in my career, needed to maintain that income, I'm going to have to find some way to get data experience while maintaining my job. So I actually got a full-time job as a data analyst at night for a company while maintaining my full-time job. I was the original overemployed, but both companies were aware. I didn't do it sneaky. I let both companies know. They both knew what my schedule was. I worked 16 hours a day for a couple years, really just building those data arms and skills and maintaining my career. And it took time. It really took time to be able to fully transition, but it was worth it to me because then I was eventually able to get down to one job, and it was in data. But I would say there's a balance, right? There's so many entry-level applicants. So I don't know if that's easier. I think your competition is much greater at the entry-level point, but I think the balancing act of trying to get a higher paying job as your first role in data is difficult in a different way. It was much more difficult on the personal side versus the competition side of trying to get that highly competitive analyst role.
Okay. So you were able to get that first analyst role without the master's, or where did the master's come into play?
I did have a master's already, which is why I think they took a chance on me. I had an MBA and a master's.
Oh, and a master's in analytics.
Yeah. And
Okay.
I had networked with that hiring manager for a while. We had connected on LinkedIn. I knew her for about a year before I had started that job. So we knew each other fairly well. I don't think she would have made the concessions if we hadn't already had that relationship. She knew me for a year and she knew that I had another demanding full time job. And we were on the same page when it came to making that transition. So it was tough, but she was super supportive. And I don't know if I could have done it with another
Hmm.
manager.
So the networking was really key.
Oh, 100%. If it was a blind application, there's no way I would have been able to do it because I try to be 100% upfront and honest. And both companies knew, at least I don't know who my manager told, but she knew. And the other company I was working for knew, the business hours were set. I wasn't doing any data analytics during my other job and I wasn't doing my other job during data analytics time. Both were aware, but like, who's going to take a chance on you doing that without understanding who I am? If I come in that blindly, you'd be like, well, I'm just going to get a normal person who doesn't have these weird requests, this outlandish, thing.
Yeah.
He's already established in his career and now he wants to work two full-time jobs and he's going to,
Yeah.
work 16-hour days. It sounds so odd, but then when you have that context and that relationship, it makes life a lot easier.
Yeah. If you were to tell me that you landed your first data job as a second job working at night, I wouldn't believe you. So yeah, that is like a kind of an unusual, but hey, we're all unusual in this world. So very cool story. And like you said, the networking played a big role. The best time to plant your networking tree was 20 years ago, 10 years ago, or a long time ago, like Andrew said. But the next best time is today. If you are not posting on LinkedIn, if you're not making connections on LinkedIn, if you're not commenting on LinkedIn, if you're not posting on LinkedIn, start doing it because that network will carry you to your next job and then likely the job after that. And I've seen that with not only myself, but many of my students and many guests like Andrew.
I think that's the lesson. We've all got our own circumstances and we all have struggles and it's demanding. And many of your listeners are probably studying data analytics at night, which is just as hard as having a second job, right? Like
Sure.
you're hammering out your normal work all day and now you got to come home and study and practice. And it's frustrating and people on Stack Overflow are mean, but
Yep.
it's possible. And you just got to have supportive people like Avery who's showing you can do it. Here's success stories and keep that motivation.
Yeah, for sure. It is possible, but it's hard. It's definitely hard. The cool thing is that it's possible. The not cool thing is you got to put in the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, that's like anything in life, right? You have to put in the time. If anything's free, it's probably not as good as you think it is. So I love it. Andrew, what other advice would you give to aspiring data professionals?
I think networking is key. You really just need to get, and it's not just networking up, right? It's not just trying to talk to recruiters and hiring managers. It's just as, if not more important, to network out into folks in your same circumstance who are trying to upskill, who are trying to get that first data analytics job so that you can develop that community and support each other, whether it's a boot camp that has a good Discord or, you find folks on LinkedIn or in your community. You really need that support. And the benefit is now your knowledge sharing. What worked for somebody, they can share that with 20 people. Now you don't have to live in isolation and try to learn these lessons on your own. You can benefit from the
Yep.
knowledge of 10, 20, 100 people to help you on your journey.
I love it. The community is such a good aspect. So whether that's through some sort of Discord, like Andrew said, or whether that's inside our community, inside the Data Analytics Accelerator, having that community is a big part of your data journey. Don't do it alone. There's no need. Andrew, thanks so much for coming on the pod. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Avery. Pleasure.
If you're looking to make the pivot from whatever your career is into data analytics, I highly recommend my program, the Data Analytics Accelerator. We have a lot of fun in the program, and there's over 350 other aspiring data professionals on the same journey as you. I'll teach you everything that you need to know. I'll help you get your LinkedIn network and your resume all sorted. And then, of course, I'll give you all the projects and portfolios you could ever need in this data journey. If you want more information, you can find it down below in the show notes. Have a good week, everyone.